win this division, but they are 5-4. After that, you've got the Rams, the Niners, each 4-4. The Niners, God willing, man. I mean, if Christian McCaffrey ever does come back.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Are they definitely done with Daniel Jones from this point? And any shot that Dable is off the sidelines, meaning he gets fired before next season?
They have a general manager in Joe Shane. Every big move has to get approval by ownership. So look, the bottom line is they don't know who their future quarterback is past this season. Tommy DeVito's clearly not the answer. They don't have Drew Lock's not the answer.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
A lot of concern, I would say, for Georgia in Carson Beck. 3 interceptions. Once again, his third 3-interception game in the last 5 for UGA.
You can argue if they had Alex Orji as their starting quarterback for Georgia, they would be perfect and unbeaten right now just by not turning the football over and running it with your talented backfield.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
What's up, everybody? Welcome in. This is Pro Football Today here on SportsGrid. Adam Kaufman joined, of course, by Tom Vecchio and Dave Sharapan. We have got you for the next 75 minutes to take you into kickoff in this crucial NFC West matchup between the San Francisco 49ers, who are favorites in this one by 2.5 points. No longer a 3 out there, maybe some rogue 3s if you look carefully, and of course the LA Rams. Both teams coming off of high-scoring wins, wildly entertaining games, but guys, this is a monumentally important game for both of these teams in their quest to get to the postseason, obviously. Let's start with you, Dave. What are your expectations going in?
Boy, I hope we get a game remotely close to last Thursday. A division game that lived up to the billing, came down to the last second, and ended on 3, which no sports book around on planet Earth, or even if they got one on Mars that takes bets and same-game parlays, they don't want this game to end on 3 tonight for San Francisco. So I hope it lives up to the billing. I don't know if we're going to get the scoring that we did, but the total would indicate that we will. And the last game that the Rams played would indicate that we will, because the Rams and the Bills went for a shootout that went all the way up and down the field. Both teams got into the 40s. I can tell you this, we're not both teams getting into the 40s tonight, Adam. That I know. Total-wise, if you want to alt it, maybe alt it up a point or 2 or something like that, but we're not getting some crazy game like we did on Sunday with the Bills and the Rams.
What do you think, Tom?
I'm on the Rams. I'm on the under. I do have the Rams at +3. I grabbed them earlier in the week. I do have a sprinkle on the Rams money line as well. This is a massively important game, like you said, not just for the NFC West, but the NFC playoff picture overall. You know, a lot of the news surrounding tonight, at least from the 49ers side of things, Will Isaac Arendo, who is now their third string running back, he's their third string, is now their first string running back. He is actually going to be starting, officially active. That impacts a lot when it comes to the 49ers side of things. Once we start digging into the head-to-head and the players, the different paths of this game for the 49ers offense, I think, hinge upon Isaac Guerendo and what he's able to do tonight, and that will impact things. I think there are some routes that we could see a lot of unders hit on a lot of players. I think we will see the under hit on the game overall. I'm feeling a 24-20 kind of win, 24-21 in favor of the Rams. Of course, they will win. They will cover tonight. It's a massively important game. We have some inactives on the San Francisco side of things, not just in terms of their running backs, but their offensive line. They will be getting some defensive players back. There's so much to get to tonight in an extremely important game.
So if we could show people the NFC West playoff picture, specifically that division right now, it is jam-packed. Here's where it stands at the moment, obviously. As you can see, you have the Seahawks. They are in front. LA one game behind Washington for the 7th and final playoff seed in the NFC overall. Tom mentioned this is not just about the division, it's the conference too. LA one game behind Seattle for the division lead. San Francisco one game behind LA, tied with Arizona. So it is crowded, incredibly crowded, top to bottom. All of these teams fighting for their playoff lives. You know, in an alternate universe where the Niners stayed healthy all year, and the Rams for that matter, you know, both these teams, we'd be talking about teams that are sitting at, 8, 9, 10 wins. They wouldn't be worried about whether or not they'd qualify for the postseason. But Cooper Kupp missed time. Puka Nacua missed time. The Niners, as Tom said, are down to Isaac Guerendo. Almost had Patrick Taylor out there as the featured running back tonight off the practice squad because Christian McCaffrey has gone down. Jordan Mason has gone down. Brandon Ayuk has gone down. Deebo Samuel is not himself. Sometimes George Kittle is a blocker. This team has dealt with so much. Health-wise, things are trending up. We know that Nick Bosa is in tonight. Dre Greenlaw is in tonight. Guerendo, of course, is in tonight. And so even in spite of all of that, guys, I just can't understand a lot of the articles and stuff that I've been reading over the last couple of days. It's, my God, these Niners, they're in such a sneaky spot. How are we possibly getting San Francisco inside a field goal, as though, Dave, these Niners are the Niners of the last several years? This group is not that team. And the Rams just, I know they didn't go out and win by 25 points or whatever it was that the Niners were against the Bears, who are not going to the playoffs. But here's what they did do. They put up 40-plus points and held on to beat the Bills, who a lot of people think is going to go out, they're going to go out and win the Super Bowl. So I don't know. I agree with Tom. I think some people, and maybe you with your wardrobe, are sleeping on the Rams tonight.
Oh, I'm awake. I'm all right. This is one of those situations where, it is a short week and it's a road game for the team on the short week after a big game against Buffalo. San Francisco had a quasi bye week at home against the Bears. I mean, the Bears got 4 yards of offense in the first half, and they ran them out. So maybe people will misread that and go, okay, they didn't really do anything, and the Rams did do everything you just said they did. And yes, the Niners got guys playing that I don't know even how to spell Guerendo or say Guerendo. And I didn't know his first name was Isaac until Vecchio just said it. But he's the second choice to score a touchdown tonight. He's minus money to score a touchdown tonight. It's next man up in the NFL. They get paid too. They're at home. It's a short week. Don't be surprised. I won't be surprised if the Niners win. I won't be surprised if the Rams win. I will be surprised if we get anyone to score a touchdown that is more than plus 155 tonight. Because there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 guys listed right there. There's great work, Vincenzo, that are plus 150 or better, and everyone else is plus 420 or more. So if you guys, want to take a shot, anyone at home, find a guy below that number of 150 that's going to score a touchdown tonight. You're going to make a big score.
I don't think there's anyone that we could reasonably go to. I'd be more interested if we did see Isaac Guerendo out. I do have some bets out there on Keyshawn Vaughn, who is the 5th string running back for the 49ers, but obviously don't expect that to come through at this time. There's simply a play based on the number, anticipating that Guerendo would be out from a couple days ago, because as Adam said, it would be Patrick Taylor who would be the featured back, but that's obviously not the case. I also have a position on Kyle Juszczyk, if I'm being honest, because again, just anticipating. As I've always said, you want to plan before things happen. So if we do see Keyshawn Vaughn or Juszczyk in the end zone, I'll be happy. Granted, they're very small unit plays just because, or I should say quarter unit plays just because I was anticipating that Grando may not be fully healthy. Once we get into the running back talk, I actually want to really dive in on the game plan for the 49ers and how this game will actually unfold, because I think we're in for a Brock Purdy game tonight.
Whoa. Wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, I tend to like Purdy as well, and we'll get into the QB comparison in the next segment. But just to give people a little bit of history, here's really the question, Dave. Can we take anything from the previous matchup into this one? Because the Rams back in week 3, long time ago, an eternity ago, won that game 27-24. That game was in LA. However, personnel is really the talking point here. You had in that game Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, they both missed it. They weren't available for LA. Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, both missed that game. Brandon Ayuk did play. I mean, these teams don't even resemble one another, what we're seeing tonight versus what we saw last time out.
I wouldn't count much of it at all. I mean, when Vecchio just said those names, I thought he was calling out like hockey players' names. They're football players. Who are these guys?
Line change. We'll be back. More with Tom and Dave. I'm Adam. It's Pro Football Today here on SportsGrid.
So my team didn't win this weekend, but I still did with this app that's taking over the game. Sports Millions Pick'em lets you make quick and easy predictions. Pick your favorite players, go higher or lower, and you can still win big even if your team loses. Plus, the multiplier is insane. With just a few picks, you can win big money. So get on it. They've got a welcome bonus to help you start off your winning streak.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the game starts so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York team has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Back on PFT, we are getting you ready for Rams-Niners. Should be a fun one tonight. The NFC West obviously helping to determine who is going to win that division ultimately as we are running out of regular season here. In fact, this is the final week of the regular season that looks normal. After this week, and even this week's a little weird because we got the Monday Night Football doubleheader, and we'll be with you on Monday to preview that. But after this week, then you get into Saturday games and Wednesday games. Eventually, Thursdays and Mondays disappear altogether. It's a weird, wacky, wild time of year. Let's tell you a little bit more about this contest. If you believe in trends, a lot of them do favor LA. How about some of these nuggets? The Rams are 13-2 against the spread in their last 15 December games. Again, good coaching. Speaking of Sean McVay teams, 8-1 straight up on short rest. A feather in the cap of Kyle Shanahan, however. He is 10-5 for San Francisco straight up against McVay, but more on those Rams. 6-1 ATS run on Thursday Night Football. They handle these primetime games well. Rams 9-2 against the spread in their last 11 divisional matchups. The Niners 0-5 ATS in games after a win this year. As we know, they have been beaten and bludgeoned and unable to string any success together. The question in here's Dave is, do these trends, which again are generally pretty overwhelming in favor of LA, mean anything to you?
Nope. We just got to sit in the book and take the bets and just relax and go, okay, this is good. I mean, it's good information, and it's certainly good for us in the content space to talk about. Mm-hmm. But I don't think they run deep enough. And like we just mentioned, that it's a totally different game than it was just this season as far as number of guys in, especially impact guys. So, yeah, I don't think it matters much. But, again, that's why opinions are great, because everybody has one and they're all different. It's awesome.
Vecchio, nothing more than confirmation bias to your already Rams-sided opinion?
Rams-sided opinion, absolutely. I've said enough about trends, and I don't want to rehash my entire thoughts about trends, but you can find trends to support anything, right? That's what it comes down to. If I went into this game and said, I love the Rams, I'm going to be looking for trends that support backing the Rams. And then if I couldn't find trends, I would continue to narrow it down and say, oh, when we have Sean McVay in a divisional game on a short week when they are underdogs of at least 2.5 or 3 points, he covers X amount of the time. I would then be searching for things that specifically validate the process, the thought that I already have. So I've largely been out on trends for the most part in my entire time doing this.
Okay, well, I know what you are not out on is supporting Brock Purdy. Very supportive of the Niners quarterback tonight. Let's get into the QB comparison. This one's interesting on both sides, really, but specifically with Purdy and his props really being all over the map. You're looking on the screen right now at 258.5. When I was looking at this earlier today, you could invest in Brock Purdy's passing yards anywhere between 245.5 all the way up to almost 260 like you're seeing on the screen right now. So again, wide range. You have to love this, Tom, though, especially if you are of the belief that the Rams are going to win, because it simply means, one, Purdy's going to be passing, and two, we already mentioned Guerendo, and we'll do more on the running backs in a bit. The fact that Guerendo is, coming to this one clearly not 100%, we don't know how much Purdy is going to trust that run game.
That's where everything starts for me. And, I don't know if we can fold this into the running back discussion since they're so closely intertwined. But my belief in Purdy is less of a belief that the Rams will be out ahead winning. And it has so much to do with Guerendo, not to mention the fact that Trent Williams is also inactive tonight. We forgot to mention that up at the top, but he is inactive tonight. So when we're looking at a team that with a loss, the 49ers playoff percentage will be sub 1% to make the playoffs. So, they're not technically mathematically eliminated, but their season is on the line tonight. So if Guerendo is not fully healthy and you then are trusting a fourth or fifth string running back and your offensive line isn't fully healthy, they may want to run the ball under Kyle Shanahan. That may be their philosophy. They like to do that, but that may not be the case tonight. So I think this has to turn into a passing game for the 49ers because so much of it is in it's on a knife's edge when it comes to Guerendo and his production, which we can get into the running back. So I love Purdy overs on his yards and specifically also over 30.5 passing attempts. That's my favorite prop of his because I think they have to move the ball through the air tonight.
I can't believe when I look at that one, Purdy's yards is actually more than Stafford's. I'm looking at it, and it's now significantly more. I mean, like Adam said, it wasn't that high this morning. They were a lot closer together. So there's been some huge steam And again, it's probably due to the running back situation more than the game script. But the completions, Stafford has more. The attempts, Stafford has more, higher number. So when you look at the quarterbacks, you're like, wait a second, what's going on here? And again, when you just look at the numbers and forget game script, narrative street, all that other stuff, you go, are they really going to be passing the ball that much more? Or are they even going to have the ball that much more? That's where you start to go, okay, now I'm going to start looking at under this, under that, and maybe over this and over that. Which would lead us right to the running backs, because that's where it's got to be made up.
Yeah, that's
Before
where
we go to the running backs,
I know we're.
Well, go ahead.
Yeah, we're going to be coming up against the break soon, and we have a lot to get to with the running backs. And I have a little bit of a rant to go on for running backs in a good way, and we can really break this situation down, because ultimately I think there are 3 paths forward for this game, and I don't mean exactly 3 paths, but I think there are 3 general scenarios that will play out when it comes to the 49ers running back run game, whatever you want to call it, and that will impact the rest of the game plan. So when it comes to what the 49ers do on the ground, I think that impacts Juwan Jennings props and George Kittle props and Deebo Samuel props and all of those things.
Just another thing to consider, too, Brock Purdy, the last time these teams met, again, I know, eternity ago, Jordan Mason was the main running back in that game for San Francisco, but Brock Purdy ran the ball 10 times for 41 yards. Okay, 10 for 41. His props in this one, 4.5 rushing attempts, and yardage is in the mid-20s, even low 20s. So might be something worth considering if he's going to be scrambling around trying to take care of business himself. More on the way here on PFT.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching!
Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this one?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Uncle Stevie can just walk up the aisle like he's at the supermarket. I'll get a starting pitcher here, I'll get a closer here, I'll get a first baseman here, and he'll just keep throwing things in the cart because there is no limit.
Now he's gone, so they got to go get arms to make that team better. Because the bottom line was they were just outclassed by the Dodgers. Let's face it, they got their ass beat.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
OU is definitely better than Syracuse. Miami's lost by 4 and by 5. But that offense is so good.
Right.
You cannot run away from them.
But the perception is, if we're talking about those two teams, Oklahoma's just this blue blood program, and Syracuse and Georgia Tech are not.
Right.
So that's why we give you a reason to keep out Miami from the playoff.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
How do you find some of this great talent that you've brought in, who are still early in their career, might not have a ton of tape on them yet?
I've been around this business, man, for almost 20 years. So a lot of these guys will tell you that I popped into a lot of gyms, sparred or just worked on the side or, kind of worked out, just watching. I've always loved this sport, man. I think it's the greatest. And we want to continue to put on the next up-and-coming superstars. We know we got them.
Only on SportsGrid.
So just before we hit the break, we were talking about Brock Purdy and the Niners, passing props, all of that. What is it going to look like, the offense, without even getting into some of the pass catchers? And there's so much conversation to be had concerning George Kittle, Juwan Jennings, Deebo Samuel. I mean, everybody who is a true threat on that side of the football. But the run game, We use that kind of segue of look how much Brock Purdy ran the last time that these two teams matched up. Let's take that to the run game for the actual running backs, Isaac Guerendo and Patrick Taylor, who is in the mix. I mean, he's still part of the conversation here. We don't know exactly how healthy guys Guerendo and that foot injury are going into this game in terms of how much Purdy is going to want to lean on him, or really Shanahan, the offensive coordinator, how much they're going to want to lean on Guerendo versus a split share in the backfield, or, not even running as much as maybe they have in recent weeks. What do we make now that we finally have props, Tom, available on Guerendo? What do we make of what he is going to look like?
So this is where, I said, I think there are three scenarios for the 49ers backfield. Scenario one is that Guerendo is good to go. He sees the ball 18 some odd times. He rushes for 70, 80, 90 yards, whatever it might be. Scenario two is that he goes out there, he re-injures it, and then he's out, and then we see Pat Taylor and we see Keyshawn Vaughn stepping in the mix, and maybe even Kyle Juszczyk. Scenario three is that he plays, but he's ineffective. Again, Trent Williams is not playing for the 49ers, right? We saw we didn't see James Cook have a big week last week for Buffalo. And he's ineffective. He's not fully healthy. Maybe he's playing a decoy role, whatever it might be. So two of those three scenarios, we're not seeing a big game from Guerendo. And as I said, the 49ers season is essentially on the line tonight, almost mathematically. And that means Purdy has to throw the ball. So again, Kyle Shanahan has a philosophy that he likes to run the ball. He wants to do this. He wants to do X, Y, and Z. But that may not actually be the case tonight. So it has to turn into Brock Purdy doing more and more here and there. And that's where we see the attempts and the yards pile up. And we can see high yards and high attempts, even in a low-scoring game.
David, is a soft run defense on that LA side, though.
Yeah, and saw a little bit of that on Sunday, which, again, when teams have to change things because of injury, I'm sure that is in the game plan, but we don't know. I'm looking at Guerendo's stats for the year, and I'm going, yeah, these are all guesses. The guys on the other side of the counter are guessing. They're just throwing these numbers out here, and not a lot of people are probably betting these because the don't know is the most popular choice. We don't know. So I don't know. I used to tell people this, like in the book, good luck, come up, bet the rushing props, see what you can find. The Purdy one has me more intrigued. It's weird to say that the quarterback rushing prop has me more intrigued, considering he had to run so much in the first game, and he may be under a lot of pressure and run and scramble. That number 18.5 for total yards rushing for Purdy looks low.
Dave, what about Kyren Williams on the other side, obviously, because this is another interesting case, but in a very different way. We don't know how to handicap what to make of the Niners. On the other side, we know what Kyren Williams is, obviously. We know what he's capable of, and at a minimum, if you're thinking about builders and that type of thing, he's gone for 40-plus rushing yards in every game, 50-plus rushing receiving combined. He's probably, there's a reason that his line is, rushing receiving combined up into the 90s, I think. There's or high 80s anyways. You look at the so high 80s. So it's not as though there isn't this expectation he is going to be heavily involved in this game. But in recent weeks, we've had to account now for Blake Corum as well, and who is going to actually get the opportunities, because there's been a certain level of unpredictability, at least early in games, from McVay as trendsetters. We saw a game a couple weeks back where Corum had 6 carries to Kyren's 1 right out of the chute, and then it flips, and Kyren ends up with more than double by the time the game ends. So, what do you make of this backfield here?
I think you have to consider it being a possibility. This will, if you guys have done fantasy leagues, this is that time of year when fantasy stakes are getting higher and higher, and it's driving people crazy when you have 1A and 1B back situations. Not only scoring, but just usage and getting the ball. If you think Corum's props are priced on him not getting much usage, and Kyren Williams are priced on him getting the most usage. If you disagree with that, there's value going the opposite way on both.
All right, we are going to step aside much more with these two guys, including some same-game parlays on the way. Can we win you some money? Can we win ourselves some money? We're going to tell you how we would build them and then see if the crystal balls prove true.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this one?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Uncle Stevie can just walk up the aisle like he's at the supermarket. I'll get a starting pitcher here, I'll get a closer here, I'll get a first baseman here, and he'll just keep throwing things in the cart because there is no limit.
Now he's gone, so they got to go get arms to make that team better. Because the bottom line was they were just outclassed by the Dodgers. Let's face it, they got their ass beat.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
OU is definitely better than Syracuse. Miami's lost by 4 and by 5. But that offense is so good.
Right.
You cannot run away from them.
But the perception is, if we're talking about those two teams, Oklahoma's just this blue blood program, and Syracuse and Georgia Tech are not.
Right.
So that's why we give you a reason to keep out Miami from the playoff.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
How do you find some of this great talent that you've brought in, who are still early in their career, might not have a ton of tape on them yet?
I've been around this business, man, for almost 20 years. So a lot of these guys will tell you that I popped into a lot of gyms, sparred or just worked on the side or, kind of worked out, just watching. I've always loved this sport, man. I think it's the greatest. And we want to continue to put on the next up-and-coming superstars. We know we got them.
Only on SportsGrid.
This is Pro Football Today here on Sports Grid with Dave Sharapan, Tom Vecchio. I am Adam Kaufman. Thanks so much. If you are watching along on Sports Grid TV, the whole network of options that you have available to you, or of course listening on Sports Grid Radio, Sirius XM channel 159. However you are consuming this show, we are grateful that you are here, and hopefully we can pay you back in the form of making you some money tonight. It is time for our same game parlays. Vecchio, let's start with you, bud. What do you have?
It's Thursday. It starts with me. We have a four-leg same game parlay, and it starts off with taking the Rams at plus 3.5. Obviously, the number live is plus 2.5, wherever it might be. That's where I certainly want to start. Again, I think they keep this game close and/or win it outright. Cooper Kupp for 60-plus receiving yards, taking his number down just a little bit. Did not play against them last year due to injuries, but back in 2022 and 2021, he's absolutely torched them. 122 yards, 79 yards, 122 yards again, 118 yards. I think he goes absolutely crazy tonight. Brock Purdy for 250-plus yards. It is sitting at minus 148. Again, ulting him down a little bit. This goes into my whole theme that we're going to see less running from the 49ers simply because they are not going to be able to run the ball, not because of the defense on the other side. But again, they're not fully healthy. Trent Williams isn't there. And then I expect Stafford to put up some yards tonight. They're going to move the ball. They are cruising on offense right now with Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua back, and we have seen fantastic stuff from Stafford. Do I expect him to go for 320-plus as they did last week? No. Do I expect him to fall at 183 as he did against the Saints a couple of weeks ago? No. But when we're seeing consistently 240, 290, 290, 290, 279 from Stafford over the handful of weeks prior to that, that's the kind of range I expect him to be in that 250 to 280 some odd spot. I think this is, slightly in favor of the Rams tonight. I do have them covering and or winning this game, but I think the yards will specifically be there for Purdy tonight.
So listen, I have a tendency to be long-winded. I don't have to be here. And Dave, if you don't like my SGP, you're just being a dink on purpose. Because the fact of the matter is, what I have independently built of Tom is basically just a watered-down version of what he just gave you. He was at 4.5 to 1. Mine is at 3 to 1, and we have a couple of the same legs, really 3 of the same, because he took the Rams at plus 3.5. I'm taking it up to a little bit more comfort at plus 7.5. Just finish, even though I think they're going to win, just finish within a touchdown. He gave you Stafford 225 plus passing. I'll give you Stafford 225 plus passing. He gave you Purdy 250 plus passing. I will give you Purdy 250 plus passing. I will add to the Purdy thing that he is facing a team that has allowed the 30th most yards per pass at 7.5 so far this year. And also, the Rams have allowed the 4th most big plays, 20-plus yards. That is how that is defined. The 4th most big plays in the NFL this season. Purdy should absolutely get there, and I think Stafford, just with Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua and this arsenal of weapons that he has, he's going to get there. The big difference, really, in our parlays, outside of mine coming in at a lower number, is he gave you Cooper Kupp. I'm giving you Kyren Williams at 70-plus rushing and receiving combined. Again, a lower number than he typically produces. At minimum, he is at 50 every single game, and generally, he's up over 100. I'm looking for him at 70-plus.
This is very interesting. We have a couple minutes to mull this over, but I will ask a follow-up question to Vecchio. Which one, when you look at it, looks like the one or felt like the one that you were most worried about when in your same game parlay?
Ultimately, I think it actually comes down to Cooper Kupp. I'd put him at first, and then would be Stafford. And the point that I've made about the Rams before, I made it to Ben and Donnie this morning on the early line. When it comes to the Rams offense, when they're fully healthy, between Kyren Williams, Puka Nacua, and Cooper Kupp, generally my thought is that 2 of the 3 will always have big games if they're moving normally. And there's a chance that Cooper Kupp has a slower game. I can honestly see him ending with 40 yards and a touchdown. Puka Nacua has 100 yards and a touchdown. Kyren Williams has 100 yards and a touchdown. So there may be a game script scenario where Cooper Kupp doesn't have to have a whole lot of yards. So he actually falls behind, and Stafford still gets there, but we actually see Cooper Kupp fall below.
That was well stated. Kind of what I was thinking when I looked at both of them. I thought that was the one that kind of stuck out. And then the other thing that was different, and Adam, you went extra, as you always do when you come up with yours. You took the 7.5, and it cost you a lot, and it lowered the payout. But I think it stays within that number. 24 to 20 is very possible tonight, which would put the Niners winning by 4, which would leave that plus 3.5 not there. So tonight, good job, Adam. I'm picking your same game parlay. I don't know how it feels. I hope it feels exciting. I hope you get there.
You know what?
You can brag about it on the Twitter all night long.
Feels like acceptance. That's what it feels like. It feels like acceptance. Feels like impressing your dad.
Yeah.
Hey. Really wonderful moment for me, Dave.
There you go.
Look, I hope they both win. Obviously, these two have a lot in common, you know.
Yeah.
So by all means, if you're out there watching, listening, if you got the loose change lying around, I'm not telling you to put a car payment on it. You guys sprinkle both.
Which one would surprise you of the quarterback? Because you guys ended up on the same thing, which you really haven't done.
Well, I'll answer this one first because he took the Cooper Kupp there. Stafford not getting to 225 would surprise me the most. But part of that is game script. If I am of the belief that the Rams are going to win this game, never mind cover, which I am, how in the world does Matt Stafford not get to 225 passing yards? I mean, Kyren Williams would have to be incredible, or Stafford would have to get hurt.
Like Stafford's seen some of these games that they've won. Granted, these are different game scripts. When we see a 183 versus the Saints or 154 versus the Raiders, these are obviously very, very different. It would be Kyren awesome on the ground, right? 100-plus yards on the ground alone. Yards to Puka Nacua and a defensive score, and then like really, really inefficiency on offense from the 49ers. And he ends with like a $190 because they don't have to pass the ball. And then at that point, I think Corum has a big game because then they pull Kyren Williams.
Sure.
If it's Stafford, fellas, it's got to be because it's a blowout in the favor of the Rams. I looked at that and said, because if it's that, it should be Purdy should get there easy. But I'll be very surprised if that part of both of your same game parlays doesn't hit. We'll have something to talk about when we reconvene on Monday, because that would be the most surprising thing to me of all of those.
Listen, at the top, I said I got
would.
Right, I said I got the Rams money line, so that'd be okay with me.
I believe the Rams are going to win. If the Rams lost, would I be shocked? Of course not, as Dave acknowledged earlier. If the Niners win this thing in a blowout, or even quite frankly, if less so, I would be less surprised if the Rams won the blowout, simply because I just think that their overall team and the way they are playing right now, last week against the Bears, I guess notwithstanding, I think it trends in that direction. If the Niners win this thing in a blowout, that would shock me. I'd be absolutely floored.
Yes.
Yeah. Agreed.
Because there are times that the Rams have lost this season, but they're still there on the offensive side. Right? They still put up the points. They still put up the yards in most scenarios. Like they're still getting out there and scoring. Like they lose to Philly 37-20. Like at least they're out there scoring. So the yards would be there for Stafford if they don't end up covering the 3.5, like you said, 24-20. That I can understand.
Sure. Yeah, it's an interesting game. I feel like there are a lot of, the quote-unquote obvious spots and players to tackle and target. We haven't really gotten into the wide receivers and I was going to say tight ends. Really, there's only one interesting tight end. That's George Kittle. But among the pass catchers, we'll get into that stuff on the other side, because we do need to explore. Because there are a lot of people, especially in the wake of the deleted tweet and Debo, wanting the ball more, calling for it. He has been so remarkably inconsistent and hurt, to his credit, this year that a lot of people uncomfortably betting on overs for Debo Samuel. What can we expect? More when we come back.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Uncle Stevie can just walk up the aisle like he's at the supermarket. I'll get a starting pitcher here, I'll get a closer here, I'll get a first baseman here, and he'll just keep throwing things in the cart because there is no limit.
Now he's gone, so they got to go get arms to make that team better. Because the bottom line was they were just outclassed by the Dodgers. Let's face it, they got their ass beat.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
OU is definitely better than Syracuse. Miami's lost by 4 and by 5. But that offense is so good.
Right.
You cannot run away from them.
But the perception is, if we're talking about those two teams, Oklahoma's just this blue blood program, and Syracuse and Georgia Tech are not.
Right.
So that's why we give you a reason then to keep out Miami from the playoff.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
How do you find some of this great talent that you've brought in, who are still early in their career, might not have a ton of tape on them yet?
I've been around this business, man, for almost 20 years. So a lot of these guys will tell you that I popped into a lot of gyms, sparred or just worked on the side or, kind of worked out, just watching. I've always loved this sport, man. I think it's the greatest. And we want to continue to put on the next up-and-coming superstars. We know we got them.
Only on SportsGrid.
All right, we are back here on Pro Football Today. Again, taking you up to Rams Niners. Should be a fun one in the NFC West. So all this talk about quarterbacks, running backs, same game parlays. Let's get to the guys who are creating all of these yards that we expect Brock Purdy to get and Matt Stafford to get. Tom, let's focus in on the Niners first. You know, I think the Rams are interesting, obviously, with Nakua and Kupp and the two-headed monster they are. But the Niners, between Jennings, who went off in this matchup last time they faced off, went for 175 yards, 3 touchdowns, 11 catches. George Kittle, who has been a security blanket throughout much of the year when he's not blocking with Trent Williams out, who is out again, but has, largely been relied upon, obviously, by Brock Purdy, and has been pretty stable in that offense. And again, Deebo Samuel, who has been woefully inconsistent and hurt, but now wants more action. He wants the ball sent his way. Who makes sense to invest in here?
So I can make a case for all 3 players, and I think we can make it actually very reasonable that Juwan Jennings and George Kittle are the best options to go to. That doesn't mean we can't find Deebo Samuel props to go to. I am not betting on Deebo Samuel yards. I'm not betting on his rushing plus receiving. There's a route that he could see some extra attempts because, again, Isaac Rendo may not be fully healthy. I like Deebo Samuel for a touchdown up at plus 145. I think he can get a score, but still not have a massive amount of yards. Also, there's a boost on FanDuel for a boost for player to catch a pass on a drive. So Deebo Samuel to catch a ball on the first drive is at plus 100, 30% boost to get up to plus 130. Again, they get him involved. He scores, but he doesn't have 80, 90, 100 yards, right? I think it's reasonable. Jennings and George Kittle, those are the best options when it comes to the San Francisco offense. That's where we want to be going for high level of consistency, involvement. They have good underlying metrics in terms of, routes run. Granted, Kittle, again, like you said, blocking at times, but Juwan Jennings, I think, is a phenomenal talent. I think we should be looking there for consistency in the passing game. Obviously, the yards are always safer compared to the reception. So we can find viable bets for all of them, but Deebo brings the most excitement if we want to see him get involved early and often.
I can't believe the receptions numbers. I'm looking at the reception numbers. Puka Nakua 7.5, Cooper Kupp's 5.5. Can you find the next Ram? I mean, because you got to scroll down and find the next Ram. Do you know who the third Ram is? Either of you?
Tutu Atwell or Kyron Williams or
it's the running back. Yeah,
Kyron Williams.
It's Williams.
I would think. Yeah.
2.5. That's it. And then
2.5.
At least on FanDuel, they got 1.5 for DeMarcus Robinson. So you mean to tell me only 4 guys are going to catch passes tonight? That's it.
But that's
only 4 guys.
Fantastic.
Well, I mean, if you watch,
their offense is super concentrated. We know who the ball is going to.
Right. You watch Rams games week to week, and I watch a bunch of them. Stafford locks in on Nakua, especially, honestly, and then Kupp in a sort of secondary kind of way. It's Kupp's more streaky. Nakua drive to drive is getting a fair amount of passes sent his way, but that's Tom said it, concentrated. It is what the Rams offense is.
Well, that leaves you with no one else to rely on as far as the Rams. So, you got to really focus on the Puka props. Is receptions an option? Or longest reception? It has to be Puka and 20 little light, boys, no?
I'm fine with it. I don't have any Puka props tonight. Again, I generally don't love going to number 1 receiving options on teams because as I said before, I think those lines are super refined. They get bet up. If you don't grab them the second they come out, they start at 80. Next thing you know, they're 84. You've lost your value, at least in my opinion. So I don't love going to Puka props initially, but I would prefer to go to Cooper because, again, him having 80 yards tonight I think is very reasonable when he's at 62.5 or wherever he was yesterday.
Yeah, I think it's just 7.5 is an absurd reception line. It's absolutely nuts. There are some books like I like to take alternate receiving props if I'm, putting a builder together for a lot of different guys, that type of thing. About the lowest you can go to even find available to you for Puka is 6. That's insanity. 6, 7, and then up and beyond, obviously. I can't sit here and invest in Puka to have 4 catches, 5 catches like I can for most available wide receivers. That's crazy. It's absolutely crazy to me.
Why would the books do that, though? Because there's only a couple options. So you make the number reflect the number of options. It's pretty easy, actually. I wouldn't do it. These are numbers reserved for – do you remember when Cooper Kupp was that guy?
Yeah, the MVP.
Wasn't that long ago. Right.
No.
It was 8.5. We would regularly put up 8.5 in a book. And at one point, believe it or not, we had to make his receiving yards number 100.5 because we couldn't get a bet. We would make it 90.5, 92.5, and sit there and go, nobody's betting us under. So I get it. But is there any chance right now if I backed you into a corner and said over under Puka Nacua receptions 7.5? Are you going to say under?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a huge number.
7.5 is 7.5. We're talking at that point, he needs to have, if Stafford has 33 attempts, he needs to have a 30% target share, which would be 10 account for tip balls, drop balls, whatever it might be. He needs to have at least 10 targets. And at that point, the game is probably going over. So there'd be ways to like reverse engineer being profitable and still taking it under.
He is just sort of a very imperfect number because 6.5 people are going to flock to the over. 7.5, I feel like more people would be inclined to bet under. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I could look at some, sports.
No, it's minus 152. You guys are right. It's minus 152. So if you want to go under 7.5, you have to lay under minus 152. That's where the books kind of try to balance it a little bit. Plus money on the over, boys.
Interesting.
Again, the yards would be there.
I mean,
I think most people the receptions get bet up, and then the yards I would assume are getting bet up at an equal rate to an extent. And you just take the yards at that point. Like I would never go to 8 receptions. I would go to 90 yards though.
We can give us some more data on the San Francisco side when we come on back. We are sitting here just about a half hour away from kickoff.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this one?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Uncle Stevie can just walk up the aisle like he's at the supermarket. I'll get a starting pitcher here, I'll get a closer here, I'll get a first baseman here, and he'll just keep throwing things in the cart because there is no limit.
Now he's gone, so they got to go get arms to make that team better. Because the bottom line was they were just outclassed by the Dodgers. Let's face it, they got their ass beat.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
OU is definitely better than Syracuse. Miami's lost by 4 and by 5. But that offense is so good.
Right.
You cannot run away from them.
But the perception is, if we're talking about those two teams, Oklahoma's just this blue blood program, and Syracuse and Georgia Tech are not.
Right.
So that's why we give you a reason then to keep out Miami from the playoff.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
How do you find some of this great talent that you've brought in, who are still early in their career, might not have a ton of tape on them yet?
I've been around this business, man, for almost 20 years. So a lot of these guys will tell you that I popped into a lot of gyms, sparred or just worked on the side or, kind of worked out, just watching. I've always loved this sport, man. I think it's the greatest. And we want to continue to put on the next up-and-coming superstars. We know we got them.
Only on SportsGrid.
All right, we're talking Rams-Niners back here, Pro Football Today with Tom and Dave. And I mentioned, guys, the San Francisco side, getting back to it just a little bit more. So George Kittle, we were talking about anytime touchdowns earlier. In terms of his production of late, and again, facing a team that is weak against the tight end position as well, he has 512 receiving yards in his last 6 games. I know last week it ballooned up over 100, so there's a little bit of an outlier in there, but even still, 28 catches on 32 targets for Kittle over his last half dozen games. He has been a guy who Brock Purdy has looked to first and foremost more often than not. And also, this Rams team, I mentioned weak to tight ends, and we have seen them exposed by, obviously, Brock Bowers is elite, but, Hunter Henry has gone off. The Saints tight ends, including Taysom Hill, have gone off against this defense. And Kittle, you can bet his yards or his receptions however you want to, and I probably would be inclined to take his receptions over his yards. But how do we feel about the anytime touchdown, Tom? Because he has 8 touchdowns this year, but more notably, a team-high 21 red zone targets.
Yeah, absolutely, especially coming off a game last week. Now, like you said, there was an outlier last week at 151, but the week before that against Buffalo with only 7 yards, that's also an outlier in the other direction. So essentially cancel each other out. I love the fact that he had 6 targets last week. They scored 38 points. He has 151 yards, and he didn't score last week. So, what did I say about Cortland Sutton a couple weeks ago? Cortland Sutton scored the game before the huge Monday night game, and I said I didn't want to be on him for a touchdown, but I want to be on players after they have high involvement and they don't score. And that's what we have with George Kittle. So the fact that we talk about it now, like I'm going to go bet George Kittle for a touchdown.
See that? We're talking people into bets, Dave. He also just, and this is a little narrative street of me, and I'd have to look up the numbers to see if it back it up. But he also just feels like a guy who tends to go off in prime time. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I would rather have him. I mean, we're getting guys tweeting at us right now during the show. This guy Creaney, who watches the show, appreciate him doing so. Tutu Adwell. Do you guys look at the price on Tutu to score? This should be his first touchdown of the year. You want to get the price on plus 420 for the first touchdown of the year? I don't know, Creaney. I mean, really, this is great. You watching the show. That's taking a shot. I can't advocate that one. I don't think so.
No, I mean, it's again, this is what we're talking about, where there are too many healthy players in front of him for me to like reasonably be excited about that, or reasonably. That means Kyron's not scoring, and then if it's a blowout, then it should be Blake Corum in the backfield as the backup running back, and then we obviously have to talk about Nakua and Cooper Kupp and et cetera, et cetera. Even DeMarcus Robinson, I would take ahead of Tutu Atwell. Like, there's too many options for that to be, I would say, a reasonable bet.
Just looked it up. George Kittle, and I didn't look up primetime in general. Well, go ahead.
I would say Kyron Williams for 2 touchdowns is probably better than Tutu Atwell for 1.
Well, that worked out the other night.
That
was a good. We hit that thing with who was it? Jamar got 2 touchdowns.
Jamar Chase,
right? Something like that. You guys keep talking about limited production, limited options. Pick a guy to score 2. If you think the game's going over, if you're with Vecchio and think the game's going under, that's a tough spot to be in, though.
George Kittle, I didn't look up Sunday or Monday, but specific to Thursday night football, he has played 8 of these games, and he has 6 touchdowns.
What's his price?
Plus 150?
Plus 150.
Okay.
See, and again, when we're talking about a score, that ends 24-20, I think we'd all say that's reasonable. Even if it ends 24-20 on either side, we're getting those main guys in the end zone. Right, we're getting at just about 6 touchdowns. Let's call it 24-21. There's 6 touchdowns. 3 guys on a side. We're getting those main guys in the end zone, and that's really where we want to see things. So the props would be alive at that point. It doesn't fly over, Dave. Like you said, this game's not having 80 some odd points as the Rams did last week. We're not getting both teams into the 40s, but a 24-21 game is reasonable. It ends right at that number. It is a divisional game on a short week, so to see it hit the under, I don't think would shock anyone. But I want to stick with those main guys for touchdowns, and Kittle is absolutely one of them.
you got enough great main guys involved in this game. There's a lot of
Right.
star power on either offense, so we have an idea outside of, seeing that. I'll be curious. I'll have to look it up if Patrick Taylor's line is still at minus money. That's not a guy that I feel like investing in tonight. Just put it on Guarendo and hope he stays on the field and stays healthy. We'll come back. Maybe Dave's got a back to the futures for us on the other side, or at least something he's watching for here in this game tonight to kick off.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun. I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity. I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Uncle Steve walk up like he's at the supermarket. I'll get a starting pitcher here, I'll get a closer here, I'll get a first baseman here, and he'll just keep throwing things in the cart because there is no limit.
Now he's gone, so they got to go get arms to make that team better. Because the bottom line was they were just outclassed by the Dodgers. Let's face it, they got their ass beat.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
OU is definitely better than Syracuse. Miami's lost by 4 and by 5. But that offense is so good.
Right.
You cannot run away from them.
But the perception is, if we're talking about those two teams, Oklahoma's just this blue blood program, and Syracuse and Georgia Tech are not.
Right.
So that's why we give you a reason then to keep out Miami from the playoff.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
How do you find some of this great talent that you've brought in, who are still early in their career, might not have a ton of tape on them yet?
I've been around this business, man, for almost 20 years. So a lot of these guys will tell you that I popped into a lot of gyms, sparred or just worked on the side or, kind of worked out, just watching. I've always loved this sport, man. I think it's the greatest. And we want to continue to put on the next up-and-coming superstars. We know we got them.
Only on SportsGrid.
One last segment for you here before you go off and enjoy your football evening and staying, obviously, viewing here and listening on SportsGrid, trying to win some money, looking for in-game opportunities. But this is the last of the pre-game betting advice opportunities available to you here on the grid. And so back at it. One thing, we were just talking about during the break, and it's an important point to bring up because we have not acknowledged it yet in this hour we've been with you, the weather. The forecast has called for some rain, obviously. That is not usually a passer's best friend. And we're going, on and on about overs for, Brock Purdy and considering Matt Stafford and, all these points and everything. Tom, I'll kick it right back to you. Does that potentially impact your handicap at all? Do you worry about the rain?
It worries me more in the fact of Stafford getting there, because if Kyren Williams does his thing, we're going to see Kyren Williams hit 100 yards. And again, if the rain is actually playing a massive factor, I would circle back on the Guarendo. Like, what are the paths for the 49ers offense tonight? And one of them is Guarendo just not being healthy. So even if there is rain, we're going to have to see the attempts and the yards will come from Purdy. Essentially, as I always say, it's going to come through attrition. He will get there to some yards because their running game is going to be ineffective. Patrick Taylor and Keyshawn Vaughn are not the options you want in the backfield, especially when they're missing Trent Williams. So I would be far more confident in Purdy getting there. And again, his number is higher, right? As we've discussed, his number is higher than Stafford's. I would be more comfortable with him over Stafford tonight. But I love the under, as I said from the top.
54 and showers is the projected weather. So We'll find out. They're going to kick the game. It's too late now to do anything about it. The books had the numbers up. Everywhere is 3. There are no more 2.5s. So somebody thinks that maybe helps the 49ers. The late money's on the Niners. The total stuck around 48.5, pretty much every place that I have on my odds screen. So we'll find out. Let's talk about the Back to the Futures here real quick while we can. Game has NFC West divisional impact, right? Mm-hmm. If you think the Rams are going to win tonight, okay, they will be the favorite until Sunday when the Seahawks play the Packers. Now, the 2-game parlay is the Seahawks are dogs to the Packers at home. This is going to flip drastically. If you like the Rams to win tonight, I'll ask you first, Tom, or make them the favorite to win the division.
Can you say that again? You just cut out for a second.
Give it to us again. You cut out.
So I cut out. Is it reasonable to make the leap that if the Rams win tonight, they win the division? Because the odds are going to change, and that combines with the parlay of the Seahawks losing to the Packers on Sunday night. This is what guys for years do. They take their shot in advance of the game on Sunday, and they bet the division. What do you think? Do you think the Rams win tonight and win the division, or no?
I think it's reasonable. They play the Jets and the Cardinals over the next 2 weeks. Those are 2 winnable games for them, and then they end the season versus the Seahawks. They're at home versus the Seahawks in the final game. So if I'm willing to believe that the Rams can win the division, which I have said multiple weeks ago when I called the Cardinals frauds, which they are, I would say yes, I would absolutely back the Rams to win the division.
Yeah, I agree full-heartedly, but I've been saying for weeks that, 1, I didn't believe in the Cardinals, and 2, I'm not a big believer in the Seahawks, and these Niners, much as I would like to see them go on a run, I just think they're too injured. I think their best players aren't available to them for the most part. So I think the Rams, and it's always a big if with this team, we've seen it this year already, but so long, Dave, as the Rams stay healthy, the Rams offense, because the defense isn't much anyway, if the offense stays healthy, yeah, I mean, I absolutely think they're going to win the division. I doubled down mid-season on them, to make the playoffs at plus 250. So I absolutely believe that this team has more than what we have seen so far, and I think that's a smart way to attack it, rather than just going after this singular game. I do.
And the reason I ask all of that is because then the following week, the Vikings play at Seattle, while, yes, the Rams go to the Jets. So now I think you have to look at, because Monday night when we get back together, we'll have a picture of the NFC West because they will have both played, but the Vikings play Monday night. So now we're talking about every game. It matters individually with the bets, but like from the book, you have to manage the futures and look at all these different things. Do you guys think Seattle beats Green Bay on Sunday? Vecchio, you're first.
I already have Seattle plus 3. I got them earlier in the week, so I think there's a reasonable that they can win. Do I think it's super likely, especially the Packers coming off the loss? No, but Seattle is a very tough place to play, so I would like to see them win so I could win my bet, but also them losing but still covering, I think, is on the table.
Adam, what do you think happens Sunday night?
I would like to see the Packers win that game. I would. Again, partially selfishly, I've got a Super Bowl ticket on the Packers that I'd like to, stay trending in the right direction. But I just don't think much of Seattle. I know that, there's a lot of talent there, obviously, between the wide receiving core and that 3-headed monster and Kenneth Walker when he's healthy in the backfield. Geno Smith, as good as he was last year, and he was very, very good, he's just a mistake waiting to happen this year. I mean, it feels like, I know this is not the literal case, but it feels like you can't go a game without him throwing an end zone interception or getting his team into trouble at a very opportune time to win a game or at least hold on to a lead. So I don't know. They seem a little, overall as a team, a little boneheaded. I just don't trust them.
How much do you guys think San Francisco, if they win tonight, can actually win the next 3 games. Because if they win tonight, they're still alive, like you said. But if they lose tonight, they are out. Not officially, mathematically,
What's
but you
the
can
next
take
3
them
again?
off the hunt.
Yeah.
All right. Next week, they play at Miami. Dogs at Miami.
Okay.
They're done, right? So that's why their division odds are so low. I think we have to start eliminating teams off of the NFC Championship graphic. Like they're there, but they're done. We just start eliminating.
One point I would make,
adding to other positions. Go ahead.
If we're talking about futures, and I think one of the things that we can actually recap on Monday, and this comes to the NFC South, because the Falcons play on Monday night versus the Raiders, which I think we'd agree is a winnable game for the Falcons. On Sunday, 4 p.m. slate, Bucs are at the Chargers, and that's certainly a close matchup. So I think the Bucs are favored to win the division right now, but if they lose and then the Falcons win on Monday night, we're going to be having the same conversation for a different division.
Correct. I like it.
It's a good
So
point.
all right, Adam,
it just tells you there's a lot of mediocrity out there right now. It's mediocrity disguised as parity, right? But as we know, there are only so many truly good to great teams in the NFL. And unfortunately, none of the ones that we're talking about right here during this segment fall into that category. Nobody in this NFC West division. I think the Rams have the offense to be great, but the defense can't keep up. It's like the Bengals. The Bengals have one of the best offenses in the entire NFL, but the defense is a sieve, which is why that team, in all likelihood, while not mathematically, in all likelihood, is not going to make the playoffs. So,
they're going to win
the teams
Sunday,
that have the right blend.
The Bengals are going to destroy Tennessee on Sunday. All the props are going over.
Yeah, I mean,
they're going to destroy them.
Yeah, no, I'm inclined to agree with that. All right. Well, we got to get you out of here so that you can go off and double screen it at this point. You need the one screen on SportsGrid. Nice lid. Nice. Bill is proud. He's not out there watching, but he's happy that he has your support, obviously. For Vinny, Tommy, everybody behind the scenes. For this Tom, for Dave, I am Adam. We'll catch you again during the week. Pro Football Today will be next, back with you on Monday. Double header, baby.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
She was recruited to Oregon partially by, guess who? Mark Campbell and Xavi Lopez. They know what they're doing. And I'm going to say this right now, folks. I'm going to say this right now. Mark Campbell is one of the 5 to 10 best coaches in women's college basketball right now.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
We got the NBA Cup going on. Not that anybody really cares per se about the NBA Cup. Now, I got to be honest with you. I actually did try to look of what does it mean like for the NBA Cup? Like who's playing for what here? And I lost interest and I gave up after about 30 seconds. And I was like, you know what? Whatever, dude. There's NBA games.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
He also said that the Bears head coaching opening would be the most coveted job after the season.
They'll let that guy stay. I heard today that they were very worried about screwing up Caleb Williams, so that he likes this guy Brown so much that they may let him stay as the head coach. What a disaster that'll turn into.
Pharrell coast to